Welcome back to Painlaw. I'm Adam Goldfein. This is Richard Griffin. This is where you find out the information that you need, God forbid, that you or a loved one is involved in an accident. Now, often people think, hey, I got this. I can install my own deck. I can replace my water heater. I can definitely do the personal injury claim. I don't need you. Now, that's a huge mistake. We've talked about that in past.
Right.
Okay.
It absolutely can be an enormous mistake.
Okay, well, give me an example, like real world, like where somebody almost did it themselves, and you're like, oh, don't touch that.
Well, a University of Georgia student, a really nice guy, very smart. He was on the UGA campus. He got involved in a motorcycle accident. It was not his fault. He was knocked to the ground. It fractured his ankle, tore ligaments, broke a bone. He had to have surgery. Okay. That's a big value case because the injuries are very severe.
All right.
Now, he wanted to represent, he was about to get married. He said, I really need all that money for my wedding.
He didn't want to pay an attorney.
He didn't want to pay an attorney. And he said, I'm going to go ahead and try to handle it myself.
Okay.
Now, usually they give that $500 offer. Well, they didn't do that on this.
What did they do?
They offered $30,000.
He's sitting pretty. Wedding's paid for.
Wedding's paid for. Now, there's one problem.
All right.
The case is worth a whole lot more than $30,000.
So how did he come to you?
What happened was he felt like the adjuster might be misleading him.
Okay.
In fact, he asked the adjuster when they offered that $30,000. He said, "What's the policy limits?" And the adjuster told him they're $30,000. Now he felt like something was wrong. He ended up calling my office. We got involved. We sent the letter. We sent the statutory notice that requires them to produce an affidavit of coverage.
See, I don't think people understand that you by law can make them turn it over. They have to fess up. They got to lay everything on the table for you to see.
Right. It's fraud if they don't.
And you're not just looking for one type of policy. You're looking for every type of policy that can be connected.
Right.
Okay.
And as it turned out, instead of there being a $30,000 policy, there was a $50,000 policy. And instead of just being $50,000, when I checked on his insurance, he had underinsured. It's called UM. It's uninsured or underinsured, which means that if you exhaust the liability policy for the negligent driver, you can go after a second policy.
So could you actually stack them?
You sure can. In fact, in that case, you can stack them. You can use a limited release. That's another thing. If you don't know what has to go into the limited release, you can make a mistake and actually
So how much money was his claim eventually settled for?
Well, it was a $100,000 case, and there was $100,000 worth of coverage. If he had accepted that $30,000, he would have ended up with a $70,000 mistake.
Okay, that is, I would say, penny wise and dollar foolish would be a great example. How do you know, by the way, if you're sitting at home, well, I don't even know what my case is worth because you don't want to make a mistake like that student. So if somebody's injured, what do they do? Where do they go? How does this work?
Well, you can always call at 877-PAIN-LAW, and I personally will talk to you about your case, and I'll let you know what it's worth. But you also can go to my website at 877-PAIN-LAW, and you can press the button that says Settlement Calculator. You'll have a personal injury settlement calculator and a workers' compensation settlement calculator. You hit those and you input information, and I can then look at that information, and I can evaluate the claim. Now, when I do that, I use my experience, I use past and current jury verdict research, and the facts of the case and how the law applies to that. You look at the injuries, the medical expenses, the lost wages, the pain and suffering. Are there punitive damages? And you come up with a settlement range. Now, the settlement range is going to give you a goal. That's going to be what you're going to want to have to aim for. But you need to hire us so that we can help you get that.
Well, the key is you being fully compensated. Personal injury is not profiting. It's not being shortchanged. You want to be made whole. That's the idea, right? So for pain and suffering or lost wages or medical bills, that the wrong party, the negligent party, should have to compensate the victim for their out-of-pocket expenses. Now, achieving the $100,000 in this example, as the student did, that's only part of it. Because then once you have a settlement, then you're going to have all these other people putting their hands out, all these lien holders saying, I've got a claim to that money.
That's right.
What do you do about that?
Well, health insurance, they often pay and then they turn around and try to subrogate. They put their hand out like you're saying, and they want to be paid for all the medical that they paid because you collected against a third party. Now, that subrogation claim is something that if you don't have an attorney, you're going to end up paying. That also is something that if you have an attorney, we negotiate that for you. The law says if it is not an ERISA plan, then there's a made-whole doctrine which says if you're not fully and completely compensated both economically and non-economically, then you don't have to repay that.
So basically, in English, because that's a lot of ERISA plans. People don't know about all that stuff. They don't even know ERISA starts with an E. Okay, I mean, so what you're basically saying is you're going to slow them down, and make sure that people can hold on to as much of their money that's theirs.
And that's what matters.
And that's really what matters, because at the end of the day, it's what they walk away with
You're
that
right.
matters. Right?
There's another example where a hospital lien, a hospital,
Yeah.
they had a $400,000 hospital bill.
What'd you get it reduced to?
We got it reduced to $18,000.
Okay. I mean, those are just some examples. Now, so think of some of the things that Richard just talked to you about. Holding the insurance companies accountable and keeping them honest, right?
Exactly.
Making sure you are fully and fairly compensated, finding out all the different insurance policies, stacking them together, and then let's not forget fending off everybody else that wants a piece. I mean, think about it. If you won the lottery, how many friends and family do you have? All of a sudden, everybody's like, hey, pay for this, right?
Right.
So you got to keep everybody at bay.
You do.
And make sure that your client gets everything that they're entitled to. And let's not forget the most important thing, that you're going to help them assess the value of their case, but you're the one that has to go to the website, or you have to call that number to find out. Because remember, you're in pain after an incident, but if you have Painlaw on your side, you'll be fully compensated.